All right, let's me and you talk about life for just a moment. How many people do you know that have lived their life with no problems? No marital problems, no anxiety, no depression, no conflict with family, not even addiction? Yeah, not that many, huh? Well, the fact is, life comes with its share of obstacles, but perhaps the silver lining is the fact that there are people on Delmarva who make it their mission to help others overcome those obstacles, and guess what? We'd like to introduce you to one of those people today. This is Dr. Bill Northey. He's the Chief of Clinical Innovation at Connections Community Support Programs. Thank you, Doctor, so much for joining us today.
It's nice to be here.
Okay, so for those of us who are really not familiar with Connections, tell us what Connections does.
Connections provides a wide variety of behavioral health, mental health, vocational programs to help people in communities, individuals, families, including addictions and mental health programs throughout the state of Delaware and in Maryland.
Okay, so could I boil that down to say you help families overcome their problems?
We do that.
With something called family therapy.
Correct.
Explain that to me.
So family therapists are focused on working with individuals within the context of their family. So we see all the family together, and we believe that we can't really understand an individual problem unless you understand the context in which they live.
Oh, okay, so bring in the circumstances as well, and that helps, I guess, define what's going on there.
Right, and we all as family members adapt to the members of our family, and so a problem may start out as being an individual, but we all organize around it, so we sort of help maintain it, and we can also help fix it.
Ah, okay, so well, how's this different than, would you say, regular therapy?
So individual therapists usually don't see family members, but if they do, they bring in the family members and sort of do individual therapy with each of them.
Oh, okay.
So for us as family therapists, we try to focus on the interactions between the folks in the family and what, again, is helping to maintain the problem or what can help to fix it. And so a lot of times individual therapists might ask a question that seems pretty benign, like, what brings you here? Mm-hmm. And if you're in a room by yourself and you say, well, my spouse is gone, or this, it doesn't really have an impact. But if you ask that question with a lot of people in the room and say, what brings you here? Well, my husband won't get off the couch and help around the house, or little Johnny is doing these things. So we try to focus more on the strengths and what's going on in the family so that we can move them in a direction towards healing.
So when you get everybody together, you can get a better understanding of that.
Correct. So we not only can assess what's going on, we can see it in front of us. So rather than you telling me what your relationship with your wife is like, I can actually see what your relationship with your wife is like.
And get both sides of the story. I'm starting to understand this.
Yep, and if you have more of the people, you have a lot more sides of the story.
So what kind of issues do you deal with?
Pretty much everything. So couple problems, marital problems, depression, anxiety, addiction, kids' problems in school, pretty much anything that involves a family or touches a family, we work with.
Okay, let me do this. I know you've got to be very careful about not sharing too much about any of your patients. So let me see if I can set up a situation for you. Tell me how you would handle it, what you would do. Okay. You have someone with an addiction.
Okay.
How would you handle that in a session?
So if everybody was there, the major issue would be focusing on how is the addiction impacting folks. So usually with addiction, it's not so much taking the drug, but what people do to get the drug and what happened to people after they take the drug. Okay. So that impacts families. If you're stealing money or sneaking around in order to get your drugs, it's going to impact your relationship with your significant other. It might impact the relationship you have with your kids. You may not be paying attention to your kids. So there may be all these variable pieces that impact the family and sometimes contribute. People who are stressed and feeling anxious may use drugs to try to deal with that. So looking at all the pieces rather just on one part helps us to intervene better, I believe. So
then it's really important for as many people in the family as possible to be there to say, this is how that's affecting me.
Yes, the more the merrier in my book. So I've worked with a variety of families. One time it was an adult child who was probably 25. I had all of his 4 siblings there, spouses and the parents in the room dealing with an addiction issue.
Wow. So is this a long-term process, short-term process?
Pretty short-term. So most family therapy sessions interventions go about 10 to 12 sessions. So it's usually once a week for 3 or 4 months. And about, most of those interventions last at most 20 sessions.
Wow, really? Okay. Addictions, it seems like, from the news, are getting worse and worse and worse. And I understand you've expanded your services because of that.
Right.
What are you doing now?
So we've started to do more family therapy in all of our outpatient clinics. So we're providing services. We're encouraging families to come and learn about addiction, learn how it impacts folks as well. We've started offering services in Caroline County. In the detention center, we're planning to offer some more services. So we're trying to get families involved, because a lot of times families don't feel like they should be a part of it. It's an individual problem.
Right.
So we want to say, yeah, we can help you. And even if your significant other doesn't want to be involved, we can help the family deal with that and address that issue.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question here that the obvious answer is, well, yes, of course, I'm seeing wonderful results. Tell me, what kind of results are you seeing from the family? And even if we just take a specific example like an addiction, what kind of results are you seeing from the family and from an individual?
Well, I think sometimes what happens in families is really good at organizing to help our family members. So say at the beginning when somebody may be having a drug or alcohol problem, a spouse may call into work sick for them because they're hungover or they can't go in. And that's helpful at that point in time, because you don't want them to lose their job. They're providing money to the family. But if it continues, then everybody organizes around it, and then it becomes the problem or more of the problem.
Right.
And so then we have to sort of look at what are we doing? Are we helping to maintain that addiction? Are people not having natural consequences for their use of drugs and alcohol? And see what the family role is. And when we're in it, we can't see it very well. Right. We need somebody to say, hey, did you notice that you're trying to work harder for the person that has the addiction than the person's willing to do?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So it allows them not to have to be responsible,
yeah,
even though it looks like I'm trying to help.
So the biggest, and let me break this down to make sure that I understand, the biggest, most important thing is reach out for help.
Correct.
Reach out for help.
Yes, and even if the person who's having the substance abuse problem or any problem may not be willing to do that, we can help the family figure out how to effectively deal with that.
Dr. Northey, thank you so much for coming in today and explaining all this fascinating information. Now, if you want to know more about Connections Community Support Programs, all you have to do is go to DelmarvaLife.com. Doctor, thank you for